Hello and welcome to a very exciting episode of the Pharma Marketing Playbook, Data, Gen AI and Beyond, your go to podcast for mastering pharmaceutical marketing, data analytics, and AI trends. Join industry leaders as we explore cutting edge strategies and the role of emerging technologies, how data driven insights are transforming the pharma landscape. I am Soumya Prakash, co founder at Multiplier AI, and today we have a very special guest joining us, Mr. Saakshar Duggal. Saakshar operates as a leader at the powerful intersection of law, AI, governance, and global policy. He's a 24 times TEDx speaker on AI governance, law expert, cybercrime lawyer, and a data protection attorney. He is also a keynote speaker, a member of the Forbes Communication Council and United Nations initiatives, as member of the Bharat Responsible AI Forum. He is presently serving as Vice President at the Artificial Intelligence Law Hub and is the founder of Global AI Leaders Forum. Having empowered over a million lives globally, he is one of the most influential voices shaping the responsible AI narrative in India and globally. So, very warm welcome, Sakshar. We are very excited to have you today with us on the Pharma Marketing Playbook.
Thank you so much, Soumya, for that warm introduction, and the pleasure is all mine. I'm looking forward to discussing, different respects of data protection and AI in this podcast episode.
Great. Sakshar, to start with, you've built your career at a very powerful intersection of law, AI, and digital rights. So, how has your journey shaped into AI law and data protection, and what inspired you to dedicate your work towards responsible AI? And then we'll talk about, of course, frameworks like DPDP.
Well, I think it was not an inspiration. It was more like, I would say, luck by chance, because I was very much interested in technology always, but I was pathetic at maths. I was pathetic at science. So I thought that if I don't have maths and sciences, then how can I go in the space of technology? So I took humanities, I took law, but then COVID happened, and I was in my fourth year at that time. So when COVID happened, I realized that everyone is on technology, everyone is dependent upon technology, and more importantly, cyber crimes are increasing. That's where I thought that why not fuse my profession, which is a lawyer, with technology. That's where the cyber laws came in, and after that, I did my masters. So in masters we are always said that okay, pick a topic of your choice. So I thought that AI will be relevant in the next 10 to 15 years by 2035 or so. So why not pick AI and law as your specialization? So I picked that and I finished my master's in 2022 September, and in November ChatGPT came in. So when ChatGPT came in, again it was that I was at the right place at the right time. So therefore, I thought that yes, AI has come up, and I think I have an opportunity to inculcate AI literacy. And with respect to that, yes, my mission has been very much simple, just like my name Sakshar, which means to be literate. I think I want everyone to be literate with respect to AI and cyberspace.
Right, I think that's very well put, and I think it's the need of the hour because the way not only ChatGPT but all these AI tools have completely disrupted our lives, and the way we are used to operating. We're all learners, and at the same time, there is always this problem or that area of concern. How much data or privacy is at stake, and how are organizations going to leverage that? That's always at the back of any consumer's mind, and I think that's where I think digital law, AI responsibility, and all those frameworks will become so much more important. So specifically coming to India's perspective, in India, digital personal data protection act is now slowly coming into force, though we have been sensitive as a country about data, but it's not been comparable with the West. We didn't have required frameworks, and we didn't really, I think, pay that much of an attention to an important aspect of data privacy and how it could impact. So now that the government has mandated the Data Protection Act via DPDP, and you advise so many companies, and you advise their policy making, etc., around the act. Why do you believe DPDP is such a critical milestone for India as a country? And specifically, I would like you to draw your attention on industries like healthcare and pharma. How is it relevant for them? What's the changes that you foresee?
Well, I think data protection, the DPDP Act, is a huge milestone with respect to our country. Why? Because if you look at the current scenario, India has the highest number of population, right? We are the most populous country in the world. Youth factor is there. Internet is cheap. And when internet is cheap, there's a lot of consumption of internet, and as well as there is a lot of usage of data as well. So when data, we are producing data at such a large scale, and more importantly, if you see like in the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of big businesses and companies have started to bet on India. They are saying, obviously, being the most populous nation in the world, it is the biggest market in the world. But being the biggest market, a lot of consumption and usage of data is there. And that's why a law was required where, we can regulate this data. It doesn't matter whether you are a citizen or whether you are a company, data is data, and data is very much crucial for everyone. And that's why DPDP came in. So I'm glad that this positive initiative has been taken. That's one. But more importantly, you said, what about companies and industries, specifically pharma and healthcare? See, there are a lot of misconceptions with respect to data protection, and it's not just about India. You have to understand that as human beings, we are data careless by nature. Today we talk about European Union, that they have GDPR. When GDPR was introduced 7 to 8 years back, they were clueless about that, what is the value of their data. But today, when you talk to them, you realize that they are very much literate, and number two, very much aware as to what is the value of their data. Similarly, in today's times, when we talk about India, we are at the same space where this DPDP has been introduced, and everyone is seeing this act as something new on the table because we are not used to having data protection, data privacy, consent. These kind of concepts are theoretical for us, but not practical. Now, when I talk about pharma and healthcare, well, definitely it's a sensitive industry. So, being a sensitive industry, there are n number of compliances in the DPDP Act which you have to adhere to. Why? Because number one, you are in a sensitive zone. Number two, it doesn't matter whether you are from pharma or any other industry. The DPDP Act has a simple mantra which says that the data of anyone, it doesn't matter whether it's a common citizen or a VIP, everyone's data is special, and more importantly, it's very much important because you don't know tomorrow what kind of data is going outside your zone and what kind of data can be misused by cyber criminals. Therefore, every company, it doesn't matter whatever industry they are from, they have to adhere to the DPDP Act.
Right. So, Sakshar, if we just put it in a very simple, plain vanilla kind of, understanding, what would you say is the DPDP Act from a layman's perspective? What is the change that this act is going to bring in their lives?
Well, a very simple layman definition of the DPDP Act. It is the Data Protection Act of our country, number one. Number two, why such a huge hype? So a lot of people, they might ask that, okay, there are a lot of laws that come in the last 5 to 8 years also, we have got a lot of guidelines, laws. So what's so special about the DPDP Act? Well, the special thing is the penalties. The penalties in this DPDP Act are up to 250 crore rupees. I repeat, up to 250 crore rupees, and starting from 50 crores. So 50 crores is just the starting. Now, many people might have this question that we as individuals don't have that kind of money. So how can we, adhere to this DPDP Act? So you have to understand there are three major parties in this act. Number one is the data principal. Who's the data principal? Data principal is us, whose data will be processed, whose data will be stored, the common citizens of the country. Number two is data fiduciary. This is the main party. Data fiduciary are the companies. If I go by the layman definition, data fiduciary is that entity who decides how this data will be stored, processed, and transferred. So all these companies, so the penalty that I'm talking about is majorly for data fiduciaries, not for data principals. So people can, they can actually get a little relieved because a lot of people have this question that how can we, have 50 crores or 200 crore rupees. Number three is data processors. Data processors are those entities who, on the guidelines of data fiduciary, process the data. Now, in simple terms, as I said, penalties is for data fiduciaries. All these companies have to keep your data safe, secure. There should be a transparency, but at the same time, you have to realize that there is a small penalty on data principals as well of 10,000 rupees only when there is a false complaint. So a lot of people, whenever a new act comes in, people try to find out the loopholes in it. And this was discussed while making this act, that there might be cases where people, data principals, they might go, to the data protection board or anywhere, that okay, our data is getting misused. Now, if that complaint is genuine, it's fine. But if that complaint is not genuine, then a penalty of 10,000 rupees would be there.
I think they have put it in a very simple, way for people to understand. But I think what's important is that more than the numbers to just kind of make us feel scared, it's important for the corporations and I think industry leaders or even small and medium businesses to start looking at that, very, very seriously. I think that's the tone of this act, that no more kind of being frivolous with the data. It won't be excusable that it was something was kind of an oversight. I think that's what I get from your essence as a lawyer and as a legal expert. And I think still I may be wrong, but you could help me since you advise multiple businesses. Do multiple businesses still look at DPDP as just another legal compliance in simple and practical terms? Or do you think, specifically life sciences and pharma leaders, because it's so much regulated as an industry, they truly understand DPDP beyond paperwork? Or, they understand, but yet implementation is another thing altogether. It's very challenging task. What's your experience like? And if you could share some of the thoughts, because our audience includes brand managers, includes people from pharma marketing side as well as policymakers, so I think it would be helpful to know your insights.
Sure. So, see, there are different types of companies for sure in every industry. But in majority that I'm seeing right now is that, see, because the DPDP Act is not fully live yet, right? It is the act of the country, but it has been divided into three phases. Phase one started from November 2025 to November 2026. And the last phase is still May 2027. So companies tentatively have around what, 12 to 16 months to comply with this act. Now, in this respect, there are two types of companies. Number one, people are, a lot of companies are like, we'll see, we have 1.5 years, we'll see as it comes. No need to panic, no need to do anything. And that's the problem. Number two are some self sufficient companies who are taking matters seriously. Why? Because they know that number one, this is the act of the country. You're not getting away with this. Sooner or later, you have to comply with it. Number two, their customer trust and brand reputation is obviously is a huge matter of concern, because money is one thing, but once your brand reputation goes for a six, there is no coming back. And therefore DPDP will impact this, because see, as a customer, you are a customer, I am a customer. If my data cannot be secured, if the company is not transparent with me, then how can I trust this company? Number one. Number two, if tomorrow this company is not complying with the law and they have been given penalties of 100 crores or 150 crores, then my trust goes for a six. Then no matter how much marketing you do, no matter how much advertisements you do, you will not get that brand reputation back. Therefore, these companies are understanding it. But when I talk about part one companies, see, I would somewhere say it's not their fault. You know why? Because again, why am I taking example of GDPR? Because we have a case study in hand. A lot of companies there, they were not getting compliant. But because as human beings, we think that we are not the only company, right? We are no celebrities altogether. So why us? But let's face it, whenever there is a case study in one of the industries, everyone wakes up. It's similar to what happened in COVID, right? When COVID happened, people said that, okay, we'll not wear masks. We have a billion people in the country. But once you saw that some person in your locality has caught COVID, everyone started using masks. So the similar thing is happening in DPTP right now. We are getting two types of companies in hand. However, the first type of companies, they very well know inside that there is no running from it. But still, I think they are testing waters, or they are trying to digest this fact that finally India has adopted the data protection mechanism in place. Because so far, yes, we had bodies like certain, we had frameworks like ISO, blah, blah, blah. But we never had a proper law where we can actually capitalize on this fact that data protection hygiene is very much important in our country.
True. I think, multiple points that you brought up, of great interest. I think, one is that setting this example, and as a human tendency, as you rightly pointed out, till we see an example and till we see a positive and a negative, a downside impact of not following that policy, I think that doesn't sometimes settle down in. And, I think it's always challenging to adopt to a new way of working altogether. It's not, look, I wouldn't say it's completely new, but it's just that it was never a priority. It was important, but it was not urgent. So that's the critical difference which we are seeing with our our sphere of influence and our interactions. But healthcare, it's a very different industry in that sense. We deal with very deeply sensitive data, patient records, their entire historical patterns, HCP engagement data, physicians, what are they prescribing, what's been the outlook like, and a lot of clinical information, which is really very, very personal. And it goes beyond. So, we are right now thinking of Aadhaar and maybe in our context, UPI transactional data, which is financial data. And this could only limit ourselves to, impact financially or as a personal identity. But when we look at healthcare data, we are actually exposing a lot more about we as individuals, as patients, and that's far more sensitive. It could also expose genetic patterns, because now we are dealing with a lot more data in terms of also our genomic patterns and how we have been reacting to certain drugs. So in this case, DPDP, I think, would have a much deeper and more, impactful role to play when it comes to hospitals and pharma and also medtech organizations. How should they start looking at the data right from the data collection to processing, sharing, all those aspects of the entire data pipeline? Do you see that it's, doable in 2 years? Number one. Number two, how challenging would it be?
See, it's very much doable, not even in 2 years, in 1 year, but only if you have the right approach. So, number one, a lot of people are panicking at this moment. I can understand, because obviously we are from the legal profession, so we know what are the nitty-gritties in the act. But as a layman, as a doctor, or as a hospital owner, obviously I'll panic, because as you mentioned, there are a lot of things that I have to cater to. And being a sensitive industry, stakes are high. But the right approach is, you have to understand that there are 2 points. Number one is the positive, number two is the negative, which the act brings up. The act. Act simply gives you the principles. It doesn't matter what kind of industry you're from. You first have to understand what principles the act focuses on. And these are no rocket sciences. If someone is just a little bit acquainted with data protection, they would know concepts such as transparency, biasness, accountability, regulations, mechanisms. These are some basic things which the act explains. But the downside is that a lot of people expect that, and generally this happens, that in an act there are certain points. Okay, you have to comply with X, Y, Z, whatever. Here, they have given certain points, but a lot of it has been given open to interpretation. So that becomes a problem, because okay, 5 6 points are mentioned, but what about these open-ended things? What can we do and what we cannot do? So I personally believe the right approach would be the first step. It doesn't matter what kind of pharma company you are, what kind of hospital you are. The first step is to have a gap analysis. Now the DPDP has two parts: technical and legal. So if let's say today I'm a pharma company, all right, my first duty is to have a respectable partner, a legal partner or a technical partner, and do a gap analysis. And I would personally suggest that person should not be from the organization, because there are a lot of loopholes which a person from outside can see, rather than a person who's actually working there 24/7. So have a gap analysis. It's just like how we go to a doctor. If you have something, you go to a doctor, the doctor first checks you up. The doctor checks you, that's the gap analysis. After that, the doctor knows that, okay, these are the symptoms, these are the problems, now this is the medication. The medication here are the compliances. No tech company in the world, no legal firm in the world can tell you the exact compliances before doing a gap analysis. After a gap analysis, because see, I'm not saying all the companies, they have not done any homework. Some people might have done 30%, some people might have done 70%. Something is left, that's for sure. But why to reinvent the wheel? If you have done 70% of your work, then 30% is only left, right? So after gap analysis only, you will be able to understand that, okay, what are the blockages? What are the things that we as a pharma company or as a hospital, we have not been able to do? And trust me, again, it might sound overwhelming at the moment, there are a lot of things, but once those compliances are done, it doesn't matter if it's metadata, if it's written data which is digitized, if it's genetics, as you said, everything comes under the principles of the DPDP Act. If these are coming under the principles of the DPDP Act, then I think things are sorted. But as a matter of caution, even if you've done your compliances, it should not be that we have only done our paperwork. You will be given processes that you have to implement 24/7 every day. It can't happen that okay, we have done we have done our compliances on paper, but in reality, we are seeing that there are a lot of loopholes out there. So as a company, we have to understand that we have to bring a culture of data protection. That is the right word. If in your company you are inculcating this culture through mechanisms, through compliances, through trainings, then I think slowly and gradually within a year, your company would be there.
So Sakshar, if I understand correctly, you are advising that companies one should build a culture of data protection, of investing in their data and tech side, or rather maybe partnering with organizations. Like for example, we also consult a number of our clients because we are kind of we hold an expertise in data management. So they could either partner with such companies and do that. But I think more importantly is that there has to be a clear consciousness, like the data should not step outside the required realms of the boundaries of the organization. It should not exchange hands without due permissions. I think also for the benefit of the viewers, there are certain elements which Sakshar is hinting from a legal perspective, but things like data should be anonymized. It should not be traceable back. So we should not be able to see that this particular patient is, his name is this, his number is this, or his email ID is this. All these should be completely anonymized, and there should not be any kind of a trace, so that this cannot be downloaded, uploaded, or sold under any situation. So those kind of, I think that framework is what Sakshar is pointing at. But Sakshar, that brings us another reality check. The present CRMs that hospitals or pharma companies have, most of the times you've seen they are quite outdated. They are kind of filled up with repetitive records which are out of sync. Really speaking, the marketing teams even don't understand how to really leverage this data. So given that this is a situation, what would organizations do? They have to just kind of purge the whole data and start afresh, or they look at incrementally cleaning the data. It's a huge problem.
See, the reality is yes, a lot of companies have created a mess. That's one. Because see, at the end of the day, it's not even about the CRM. The basic tendency of 99% of the companies is that they just dump their data on cloud. And once dumping is there, you have no records, no proper assessment as to where your data is, what kind of data it is. And that is a problem. See, that's why the act has given you such period. And it's not from this time. The DPDP Act was enacted in 2023. We are sitting in 2026. So technically, the act has given you more than 4 years, which is good enough. Still, however, if someone has not started with it, they have to speed up. But in these 1.5 years, they have to understand a couple of things. See, as a owner, okay, as a owner of a hospital, owner of a pharma company, I have to understand two, three things, which are very much fundamental. Because in this podcast, I thought I'll just cater to the fundamental points. Because in generally conferences, we hear terms like data localization, this and that, but no one goes to the practical fundamental points that a owner has to understand. So what are these points? Number one, whatever vendor I'm dealing with, doesn't matter which department, but whatever vendor I'm dealing with, does that vendor in their assessment, in their working, comply with the DPDP Act? That's one. Why? Because tomorrow, see, you are the data fiduciary. If some goof up happens by a data processor also, then you are accountable. Let me make this very clear. The Act doesn't mention any accountability for data processors. They make it accountable for data fiduciaries. So as a data fiduciary, you have to keep all guardrails properly. That's one. Second, let's talk about AI. These days, in the last year or so, a lot of companies we are meeting, they have started to inculcate AI in their businesses, which is great. You have to go with time. But again, you have to realize, are these AI companies, whatever AI, this thing you have, is this complying with the DPDP Act or not? Because 99% of the times it's not. You talk about data. If I'm using AI, okay, if I'm using AI in my day-to-day activities, that data is going somewhere in some server of that respective AI company. What about that? That becomes a question mark. Because see, it's out of your reach now. You have engaged that party. Now that data goes out, it's out of your reach. Tomorrow, if something or the other happens to that data, you will be questioned that your guardrails were not appropriate. And number three, as you said, you mentioned this word, marketing people, they don't know how to leverage. Again, they have this, everyone have this misconception that the importance of data protection should only be known to the IT guy or the legal guy. I'm a marketing guy or I'm a finance guy, then why should I care? That is where, the point that I was mentioning, the culture of data protection is missing. Every entity, every department in every company is responsible for data protection because let's face it, every department collects data. I don't think there is any department which doesn't collect data. And if I talk about the fundamentals of the DPDP Act, it talks about personal data. Let me define personal data in simple terms. Any data which is useful in identifying you personally. It can be your name, email ID, phone number, address, all these things. So if every department collects data, they are very much accountable. Because tomorrow, see, if the data protection board, which is the regulatory body in this regard, data protection board would not say that okay, it was fault of the marketing people or it was fault of the finance people, it's okay. They would simply say, as a data fiduciary, it's your fault. And tomorrow, as a owner, you can't say that sorry, I'm not giving 200 crore rupees because my marketing department goof up. And more importantly, a lot of, I think I should make this point very much clear. A lot of companies say that we don't have that much of amount with us. So the law also make it very much simple. The rule of land erasures, which means that they will attach your respective assets and properties and they will extract that till the time you're not giving the money or else that property goes for six. So in short, you have everything to lose. People have to understand this, that data is not a joke. As you said in the beginning, the act has a very simple mantra. Data is not a joke, so please don't consider it as a joke. Unfortunately, it has been getting treated as a joke in our country. And it's not just about data fiduciaries. As a matter of fact, data principals also, they don't also care about the data. Today you go to a restaurant, you just give your phone number just like that, without even thinking twice as to what are the ramifications of this data. Therefore, all these companies, coming back to your question, all these companies, they have to understand that these three questions. Number one, what kind of vendors you are engaging with. Number two, if you are inculcating AI, then again, is it complying with the DPDP Act or not? And number three is that within your company, what are the gaps? Is there a data protection culture which is there? Number one, if it's not there, then as an owner, it is your sole responsibility to inculcate that. Because tomorrow, let's face it, you will not goof up, but one of your departments will.
I think, I mean, it's a lot of learning here, and I think, Sakshar, you cannot be more, point blank on that. That the way we look at legal frameworks sometimes as a country, operationally, I wouldn't say everybody, but yeah, we take it key. We'll see it later. We'll take the things as they come, but this is no going back. The government is very, very serious. The lawmakers are very serious. They'll attach everything that we have, till these penalties are complied, and there is no, kind of, a way out of this. Now, that we are looking at implementing DPDP very, very seriously, I would want you to highlight some of the blind spots. For example, when we work sometimes with, say, the healthcare segment, there could be areas of data, like, for example, appointment bookings or reaching out to the patients for physician reminders. Now, here we have all the personal data of the patient. We also have the voice clones. And with so much of cybercrime going on, sometimes it makes us look back and think, what could happen if this data is compromised. So this is one of the things that struck me personally, in terms of responsible AI practices. But any other blind spots or risky practices that you see and that should be immediately addressed by the healthcare and pharma industry?
I think couple of blind spots. Number one, as I mentioned, a lot of companies they feel that their own departments, whether it's the legal department or technical department, they can do the job. I'm not saying they're not competent. They are very much competent, but as human beings, it's our nature that whatever surroundings that we are in, we will be having a lot of blind spots. Why is it that for auditing, third party is outsourced? Because the third party is coming with a blank slate, number one. Number two, they have the expertise. And number three, they will be able to cater to those blind spots which you, your legal team, your technical team would not be able to cater to. That's one. So always, whenever it's a gap analysis, always have a third party outsource this thing. That's one. Number two, which I feel this is the biggest problem, and I've met many clients, I'm seeing this trend. A lot of people, they're not able to digest this act, and that is why they make up things. For example, they have not read the act, okay, And when you talk to them, their simple statement is like, "Oh, we have done our ISO this thing, so we are compliant. Oh, we are GDPR compliant, therefore we are DPDP compliant." These are a couple of misconceptions that people are having. In Hindi it says, in Hindi we have the statement "khud ko khush karna." That is what the simple statement that is there. A lot of companies, they don't even want to hear that, okay, because internally they know that they are screwed. It's a mess altogether. But rather than working on it, they are actually making up stuff. And there are a lot of companies who are not doing this intentionally, but unintentionally. They think, that misconception is there. Mujhe laga. They think that GDPR is equal to DPDP. They think that ISO is equal to all compliances are done. Let me tell you this very clearly. It doesn't matter what kind of company you are, whether you are the topmost company in the world or you're just a new startup. I can bet on that there is no single company in our country which is 100% compliant, at least at the moment. Why? Because DPTP has come up with a lot of new problems, not a few challenges, and a Pandora box. Why is it that the big four is concentrating on this? Why is it that the big four and the big companies have started to do these things? Because they understand that doesn't matter what kind of company we are, somewhere or the other there are loopholes. And the biggest catch is, let's say if there are, for example, if there are 100 compliances, you have done 99 and one is left. Even if one is left, that penalty of 250 crores is still there. You can't say that I have done 99% of things. You can't. That's why the stakes are high. And number three, another blind spot is that a lot of people, they are somewhere getting confused between the DPDP rules and DPDP Act. So what happened was DPDP Act came in, then some rules were out for public recommendation, and now those rules are also live. So the rules, they complement the act. The rules always mention a couple of new points as well. 3 days back, I met this company, and you won't believe, they just read the rules and they said that we are compliant. And when I was talking to them, I realized they're just talking about rules. It's an incomplete story altogether. So these are the loopholes that people need to understand. And I think fourth thing, which is the most important, this might be controversial, but I've seen this. Just don't blindly believe what you hear in any session, any podcast. Trust me on that. You have to do your own homework. Because see, if today you are a pharma company, I'm a lawyer, I'm not from the pharma industry. No matter how much a technical expertise or legal expertise I have, I am not sitting there. As an owner, you very well know the real practical loopholes. So it's your sole responsibility. Yes, you hear podcasts, you go to sessions, but try to introspect as to what kind of points are actually valid to me, what kind of things I have to do. Because let's face it, if the owner has this careless attitude of dekha jayega, that okay, data is nothing, then the company would definitely suffer. But if the owner is very much proactive in this regard, then it makes a huge difference. I think that is the sole difference that we are seeing in the mindset of the owner. If the owner has a mindset of being proactive, then definitely people have started taking data protection very much seriously.
Right, I think you have put it very, very clearly that one is that 99% compliance is also not 100% compliance, and that's where we should never become overconfident as companies that we have internally solved 99% and that's okay, remaining 1% can be covered up. It cannot be covered up. It will lead to a botchy investigation and penalties later. I think that's one point which all of our viewers should definitely take a note of, coming from directly, from a person who's in the law area and he's advising clients and he's seeing these penalties in action. So that's one, big takeaway for all our viewers and audience. I think the second point which you said is the seriousness has to come right from the top. The owners and the key stakeholders of the organizations, they need to take the foundational steps, and make sure that this is and critical priority for the company. And the third point is always have an external validator rather than depending on internal teams to kind of agree with each other that everything is fine and we don't need to really bother about it. So now, if Sakshi, if a pharma company wants is serious about it and wants to take DPDP without slowing their business, what could be the first 3 4 foundational steps that they must make immediately, so that they are on the track?
Again, as I mentioned, it's divided into three parts. It's very much simple. Number one is the gap analysis. Gap analysis will take some time. So, engage with some reputable third party and outsource this. They will do the gap analysis, technical and legal. Again, I'm saying it, only doing legal and only doing technical, that's not the solution. A lot of companies think that we have done our legal thing, we only need technical. Again, as you said, don't be overconfident. At least have one gap analysis, because that gives you a clear picture that okay, we have done this much, we have to do this much. That is phase one. Phase two, when you get the clear picture, now you decide whether you want to engage with the third party or do your compliances within your organization. But obviously you have to do them, which is the paperwork. Number three becomes the most critical part, which is practically applying that in your day-to-day lives. Because a lot of companies in today's times also, they have done a lot of paperwork. But again, there is a huge difference between doing the paperwork and implementing it every single day in every department altogether. And trust me, these compliances are not just for any specific department. It is for the whole company altogether. So all the departments such as marketing and maybe even social media, all these departments which are not even acquainted with data protection much, or I should say they don't care, they would also have a different wave altogether, something new on the table. And that's why they need to understand, because see, as company owners, you have to understand one simple thing. Just doing compliances and bringing up those compliances in your day-to-day lives will not be like magic that in one day everything is going fine. It's a culture, it's a process. It will take some time, some months, at least 6 months to get used to this. That's why if you're doing it right now, you have 12 to 15 months, okay? You have time, do the gap analysis, compliances are done. I think a gap analysis and compliances would take not more than a month. In a month, these two things can be taken care of. After that, it's your sole responsibility to bring these on track. I've given you a clear picture, not confusing everyone as to what exactly should happen, should not happen. Three simple steps: gap analysis, do the compliances, apply those compliances and processes in your day to day lives, and always be on a cautious mode. Let's say you are applying those things, you can't be complacent. As a business owner, you have to see, okay, what are the loopholes, what are the things that my people, my company is not able to cater. Because see, I'll give you a simple example. Let's say in DPDP Act there is a process of giving a notice. Okay, you have to give a notice to your current customers and future customers who will be there, and that notice has to be very much transparent. We are taking your data because of XYZ. No huge terms and conditions, a simple notice. Now, a simple notice, it sounds simple, but practically giving that notice, taking consent, managing that data, having a data policy, all these things are practical in nature. So till the time you're not doing it, you will not realize what kind of challenges you will face. Because again, I'm again repeating this, DPDP Act will not give you this concession that, okay, you tried your best. That's not happening here. Either you're doing it, either you're not doing it. So you still have the time, you can do the homework, and once you are applying it, be in a cautious mode, you will be able to realize the loopholes, and slowly and gradually, you will be able to properly have a data protection culture in your organization.
I think you've kept it very simple and straightforward. And if organizations follow that gap analysis, procedures, and SOP reviews, and then an implementation plan, I think it's very much doable. That also brings us to one other question, Saakshar. I know, I'm just getting into the nitty gritties, but the consent part of it, the patient consent and the physician consent, how do organizations really implement that? So for every interaction, should there be a consent form which patients should fill up and physicians should fill up? What does the law expect?
The law simply expects that the consent, obviously, consent is crucial, but more importantly, it should be transparent, it should be clear, it should be explicit, it should not be implied. So a lot of companies, and specifically when I talk about pharma companies, they have a lot of blanket terms where they take consent. So no blanket terms. You have to be transparent and crisp as well. You can't say that we are transparent, but we have a 40, 50 pager terms and conditions. No. Transparent, clear, what is the data that you're taking, what is the duration for which you're taking, the purpose of it, in how much time will you delete that data, and any other nitty-gritties. Every nitty-gritty has to be mentioned, because tomorrow again, if obviously if a complaint is against you and the data protection board finds out that your notice is not in a proper format, which means that there are a lot of hidden things, there are a lot of subjective things, then obviously again you're not compliant with it. So when I talk about practically, right now you have a lot of customers. I know this might sound tedious, but again, you have to reach out to them in form of a notice. That notice can be on message, on mail, but till the time you're not getting consent, a proper consent, you have no authority altogether to use that data. Number one. Number two, the law also gives this power to data principals to withdraw their consent at any given point of time. They can withdraw their consent. Now a gray question, a gray area comes in here. Let's say I have taken consent and I've started to process their data, and suddenly in between they are saying that sorry, don't process our data, delete our data. Now what to do? In that case, the law says, the law has this term called legitimate use. Legitimate use is very important. Now, this might sound subjective, but proving it is very difficult. A lot of companies think that, okay, we'll just put legitimate use and we can use everything. No, you have to properly signify as to whether that legitimate use was legitimate or not. That depends upon case to case, that depends upon industry to industry as well. Like, for example, in if I talk about the healthcare industry, if I have to do an operation, the person is critical. I will not wait and take consent and everything. Obviously, I will do the operation first, and after that, because see, that is a legitimate use. The situation demanded that. But again, repeating, legitimate use is not exception. Don't use it, or I would say don't abuse it. Be compliant, but at the same time, whenever situation arises, there only you can use this trump card of legitimate use only if you are able to justify the situation.
All right. And Sakshar, this DPDP, to ensure that, these notices that you talked about, these are generally any consumer, say, for example, any patient or a pharma consumer can raise these notices, or generally there's a periodic, suddenly an audit, like, how we have it for income tax or maybe GST. This kind of, how does the law operate in general?
See, it's very simple. The law, when I talk about notice, the law doesn't give you a proper format. It does only highlight the principles that, okay, what all should be there in a notice. Now, when you do a gap analysis, obviously in that gap analysis, the respective legal, legal body, they will be giving you a proper format that includes all aspects of the law. So if you have a template of notice, that template can be used again and again for different customers altogether. And again, see, making a template is one thing, but applying that, using it, and getting a consent is another. As a company, if you ask me personally, the biggest problem is not making the notice. The biggest problem is managing consent. Who has given me the consent? Who has withdrawn the consent? Because again, let me tell you, if the consent has been withdrawn and if in a stipulated period of time action has not been taken, again, you're not compliant. So there are a lot of different ways, a lot of different gaps, I would say. If you are not 100% compliant, if you're not serious about this, trust me, late today, sooner or later, you will suffer. And one more important thing which a lot of people don't highlight is that no one asks where this money is going. Okay, this 200 crores, who's getting it? The sad part is data principal gets nothing. They get nothing so far. However, our respective legal authorities have said that we will be, obviously there is some kind of compensation that the person should get. So we will be getting that. So far, we don't have anything in the act. But that 200 crore rupees, 250 crore rupees goes to the Provident Fund of India. So technically, you're not, let me be very much blunt. It's not that, okay, it's an individual, that case will be pending for years and this and that. You're going against the government. And I don't think you would want to try that. So this is a serious matter. If, throughout we have what? We have been 40 minutes in this conversation. Throughout this 40 minutes, again and again, one point is coming up. Don't take data as a joke because DPTP will have cunning consequences.
Right. I think, very well said. And we can go maybe another 2 hours, if we just kind of delve further into it, because that's the impact. And especially, with responsible AI, you rightly put it, we don't know where our data through Gemini or through Claude, where is it going? And what do you suggest? Most of these healthcare sensitive data should be within the company on private clouds, or it should be within a dedicated server. It should not exactly, because that's what I think we are hearing from the pharma companies, that they really don't deploy any of these models. They are trying to build their own internal models because of the data aspects.
I think a simple example here is of Amazon. So almost 1.5 years back, Amazon stopped any kind of AI within their organization. And when it was asked why, they had a very simple and clear cut answer. And I think this answer, the philosophy, if different companies can have, then definitely they are in a better space altogether. So Amazon said that, see, number one, we don't want our critical data to go outside our organization. If we are deploying AI from outside, obviously that data is not in our hands. Number one. Number two, we are focusing on making our own AI. As you said, make your own AI. And number three, which is the most important, they said, we don't want to choose something which we cannot bite at the moment. So if you don't have proper mechanism in place, if you don't have accountability measures of bringing up an AI from outside, then please don't entertain it. I'm not against AI. I work in this space. But what I'm trying to say here is you have to go step by step. If you have not done level one, which is data policy, data management, then don't have something from level five, which is getting an AI from outside. Just because it is name of the game, everyone is using AI. Because tomorrow, when the data goes out of your hand, you will be questioned. Why have you deployed something which you can't even manage? That third party will not be asked, you are a data fiduciary, you will be asked. And more importantly, another important question, and or I would say another important challenge which is actually coming up, is that AI is also a data fiduciary. AI as an entity will also be a data fiduciary. That is another angle which is coming up. A lot of countries outside, they're talking about this, and they are making changes in their data protection laws as well. So I'm also expecting in the next 2 to 3 years, AI might also properly be included in the law, and it will be taken as a proper data fiduciary. Now that is part of the future, obviously, but in today's times, you have to realize that don't deploy or don't engage with anyone outside your organization which would hamper your data protection culture.
Right. Yeah, of course. I think, so just for the understanding of the audience, when we say data fiduciaries, we mean that the responsibility of enacting these policies rests with them. And because some of these companies are deploying on their AI clouds and, using their frameworks or LLM models, so that's where the law is, has to consider that AI cannot be completely out of the entire legal loop and put the entire onus of implementing. I think that's where Sakshar is pointing out from a legal perspective. But I think Sakshar very well said, very thoroughly covered for the interest of our audience. And since this is such an important topic, we'll keep conducting webinars around it, and we would love to hear the feedback of the audience on your questions and comments, how we could kind of engage this further. And Sakshar's team and Multiplier AI, we also work on the tech and legal aspects on this topic on DPDP, data protection, AI responsibility as well. So do feel free to reach out to us, and we can see if we could take you further. So thank you so much, Sakshar, for this really powerful, deeply insightful discussion. Your perspective on DPDP, AI governance, responsible innovation, and the future of regulated AI. It's been incredibly valuable, and especially for the leaders in pharma, those of us who are dealing with very sensitive healthcare data, and how, from a global perspective, navigating this is so crucial, in the present landscape. To our listeners, we hope this episode helps you understand not just the power of AI, but also the responsibility that comes with it. So, until next time, this is Soumya signing off. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep learning. Keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in AI and data. Thank you so much, Sakshar. Thanks once again, and look forward to engaging with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in this episode. We hope that the deep insights and knowledge shared today will help your business and brand grow by leaps and bounds. Remember to follow the podcast. And if you wish to know more about Multiplier AI solutions, please visit the links given in show notes.